Today I'm building the largest circuit I've ever built on Tagboard. Hello people, Joe from Hello Sailor Effects here. Welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to put my 15 years of pedal building experience, most of which done at sea in the Royal Navy, to work to build this. A box of rock on Tagboard. If you're like me and you get excited to see large tagboards inside guitar effects pedals, you're going to love today's video. Hang around to the end and you're going to see lots of tips and tricks on how to squeeze a really large tagboard into a small pedal enclosure. Cheers! This is the enclosure I'm going to use for my box of rock. I thought it was appropriate to have two rock chicks on the front, which is of course the two girls from the Flintstones. My buddy Warren sent me this artwork a number of years ago now. I believe it was a number of years ago. Anyway, he sent me this artwork and it seems to be selling well on pedals, so I thought, what better to use than this on a box of rock. Now there are some issues. I didn't age this pedal, mainly because I didn't have time before this video. It takes quite a while to get them aged and stuff. And also the yellow isn't really a Fender colour or a Gibson colour, so it kind of look a bit weird if I just aged it, because there weren't guitars aged in this colour. I did, however, check this out, chip the enclosure before I put the top coat on it, unfortunately. But by the time I'd noticed it was chipped, it was either a case of put the top coat on in a drying time to film this episode, or don't. So I chose to do this. I'll obviously, when I sell it, I'll drop the price a little bit because of them chips. What else can I do? Anyway, the tagboard for this one, I'll put the circuit on screen now. Get a screenshot of it while you can, or come back to this point in the video and pause for the build yourself. So the tagboard, it has 14 tags on it. My Kossoff drive has 8 tags on it. This is a massive circuit, and to fit it inside here, it actually doesn't fit all the way to the bottom of the enclosure unless I raise it up a little bit, and even then I'm going to have to run wires underneath it. It's huge. I've never built one of these before, and I've certainly never built one on Tagboard, so we're going to give it a go. Apologies for interrupting this rockin' show. However, I'd like to just say thank you to everyone who subscribed recently or watched videos, because I managed to hit the first level of monetization here on YouTube. And that means I get to have not only a merch store, but loads of other cool benefits too. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I hope you'll stick around till the end of this video and much more. Because there's so many components for this one, I'm just going to go through them as I populate the board with them. Now first up, we have two 1 meg resistors. I mean, you can use any type. I've got these old carbon comp ones, or some less old ones that are slightly bigger. These ones tend to have dirty leads, so I'm going to clean the leads on them. Now this one's going to go between the first two lugs on the left, right here. Now, also coming from this side here is going to be our other 1 meg resistor. It's going to go like so. I'm only going to solder this corner in because the other lugs are going to have components going to them. Right, next on the list is a 9-volt Zener diode. And this is them. I haven't even opened the packet yet, look at that. So this diode is going between this lug here and this lug here on the left hand side, because we're going to build left to right as ever. Now when orientating these, we want to make sure that our line is pointing this way, because that's the way it's situated on there. So I'm going to go ahead and fit this in. This is our 9-volt Zenith fitted. Now I haven't soldered this leg in here because we're going to need to put in a 100 UF cap, which is here. Now I show this all the time in videos, but I use my flat nose pliers to bend the legs of these 100 NF caps, because then I get both legs at the same height. Our enclosures are, in fact, thinking about it, because we've got to raise this board up to fit in the enclosure so it's so big, I probably don't want this sitting off the board too high. So I'm not going to raise it up off the board like I normally would, because it will foul the top of the enclosure and won't fit in, and I'll case myself later. So I'm going to do the thing I hate doing, and that's folding the legs flat. Damn. Oh well, there you go. Catching problems live. Better to do that than find out after I've soldered it in and trying to fit in an enclosure, eh? Right, once we've got that sort of central, I'm going to solder this end because there's nothing else going in this end. Like so. I'll just quickly tidy up them ends. Right, now in this side here, oh, if I straighten that up, in this side here we've also got a 1 meg resistor going between these two lugs as well. So I'm going to use yet again a smaller resistor just because I've got it. I think this might be my last small one, so any that go between the lugs next time will have to be the larger variant. Doesn't matter as long as it is indeed a 1 meg. The key to doing all of these is always be looking at what capacitor or resistor or component, shall we say, is going in next. If you solder something in before you've fitted all the components in. Apologies about that, I got a phone call on my duty phone. So where were we? Right. If you manage to solder in components before you've fitted all the components into that lug, you create the world of problems for yourself when you've got to try and slide components in or whatever while applying heat. So it's best just to look ahead, maybe 1 or 2 steps, and see what's required so you know what to solder in next. For example, I know I can solder this joint here because there's nothing else going in it, but here we've got some more components going in. So I'm going to go ahead and solder this now, and then we'll move on to what components go in there next. Another thing that becomes really apparent when you're soldering several components, especially if they've got thicker legs, into the same lug, is if you have a dirty soldering iron. So I have this solder tip cleaner, and I just put my iron in there, and I change the tip quite regularly, to be fair. It's one advice I would give you is to change your tip as often as you can, because it makes the world of difference, it really does. Right, so on the other side of our 1 meg resistor, we have a 5.1k cap. I've got these are vintage, which is why the legs are absolutely caked in crud. Brilliant. So I always say this, I clean the legs like this, or I use a Stanley knife to clean them, and people always tell me off for it, but how do you guys clean the legs of your components, or do you even bother? So I started after Stu Tate from Tate Effects kindly told me that my solder joints were shocking, but in the nicest way possible. Thanks, Stu, if you're listening. He was very diplomatic in telling me, and I learned a valuable lesson, that keep your tip clean and your components, especially if you're using vintage components, because they tend to crap up over time. Anyway, so we're going to fit this 5.1k resistor. I keep going to say cap for some reason. I'm going to fit that between these lugs here. I do try and keep them central. I know I don't always achieve it. Now, I can solder this end here, but there's another component going in this end. So I'm just going to solder the end that I can in to keep it in place. There we go. And then next, if you're looking at your drawing, you'll see that there's a 22 NF cap going across here. I'm using tropical fish caps as ever, just because they're my fave. No, they're not really. For some reason, it really offends people that when I use the Mullard tropical fish caps, I don't know what they have against them. There's always a comment about someone telling me that it makes no difference, or use the cheapest ones, or whatever. Sometimes I feel like, I don't know, people are watching the wrong video. I'm all about excess. So anyway, now I can solder this end, but I can't solder this end because there are in fact more going in it. So there we are. Now I've got to keep reminding myself that we're trying to keep all the components as close to the board as possible on this one, just because I'm going to have to raise the circuit up to fit it in the enclosure that I want to fit it in. So next, from here to here, we have a 470k and a 470 PF. So a 470k resistor, which is here, a nice vintage Phillips one, get in, and a 470 PF cap, which is this silver mica cap here, nice vintage one again. This is going to be like the most all-out box of rock ever. It's like ridiculous vintage components on a silly sized tagboard for what? Something that ZVEX makes, or ZVEX makes better than anyone on a PCB. I don't know what I'm playing at. Let's have it. So the legs on these Phillips resistors are really thick, so they take a little bit of heat, and they're a bit of a nightmare to manipulate if you'd have to manipulate them anywhere. So I'll put that in first. Now what I'm going to do is, because there's no component lying in the middle here and there's a big open space, I'm going to take my flat nose pliers, grab the resistor and just bend it into that space. So that should give me a little bit of space to get this cap in there too. He says, as if I can get it through there. There. Now that awesome resistor's kind of hidden underneath the cap, which is a bit of a waste, but because I'm trying to save space for the enclosure, there's not a lot I can do about that. So we can solder this end now. And because, like before, there's a lot of large components in there, it's going to take a bit of soldering. I'm going to go over that again just because now the wires are out the way, I can see what I'm doing. Now the other side of this isn't going to get soldered because I've got some other components to go in, but we'll catch up with that. Next, we're going to use a 180 ohm resistor going from this lug here to this lug here. I'm going to have to go and have a little look for that because as ever, I forgot my fluke, which is shocking, so I can't actually just test which resistor is which, and I've had to like marry up some resistors together to get the right value for this one because I didn't have it in stock. Now no doubt the more astute you have been screaming at the screen saying that I've actually put them into the wrong hole. It's meant to be the next one along, so it's a good job I took 2 seconds to look. It's a bit of an odd thing to jump 2 lugs on a tagboard. I've never really done that before, but that's what the layout is saying. So hopefully I've left enough, I clearly haven't on the capacitor, but hopefully I've left enough lead on this resistor to reach. Well done, Joe. Right, so I've snapped the lead on the resistor. Brilliant. So So time for a different tact. I'm going to yet again take one of my old component legs that I've took off, and I'm going to marry that up with them there. Should really have a good mechanical connection, but I don't think there's enough left on that resistor to get it, so that's not going to happen, unfortunately. Right, there we have it. So careful of this one. This 470 ohm, 470k resistor and 470 PF cap jump 2 lugs and go in here. Now between the lugs there are going to be 180 ohm resistor. However, I haven't got a 180 ohm resistor. The closest I could get is 2 390 ohm resistors in half. So that gives us as close as I can physically get. Anyway, to build this, I've put 2 of them together, and I've done my little helicopter thing, but just wound them right the way down. And now I'm gonna bend one half over on itself. I'll clip them straight, so I get that sort of shape, and then I'll just slot that in there. Another thing I'm going to do, because these are quite thick leads, I'm just going to squeeze the ends of the lead so then they're flat, or flatter, and then they'll fit through the two lugs a bit easier. Good job I said easier and not easy, eh? Because they are not going in easy. Right, so plan B. I'm going to make them very flat and then snip them so then they're really small. Okay, so scratch that. I was trying to avoid putting them through the center lugs here for no reason really, because I normally put, well, it is a reason, I normally put my transistors through them. However, that makes them stick up in the air, which we don't want in this build. So I'm going to put the transistors on the outside lug facing that way, and I'll just add that in there, which again, bit of an issue because it's pointing up. Maybe if I situate it like that, we'll get away with it. That's exactly what I'm going to do. That way it's not sticking up any more or less than any other component. See, normally I don't have to care about this because the enclosures are usually massive. I'm using massive components, but I really didn't want to use a large enclosure for something that ZVEX fits into something so small, you know. That's okay, there we are. Now, coming from this point here, we've got a 1 meg resistor coming from the next lug along into there. Take our 1 meg, give the legs a clean. Now I'm going to go into this one first because it's a bit of a pain to squeeze 2 components into one. If I was to go into this side first, I'd have to try and squeeze the components into there while it's in there, and it just makes it a bit awkward. It's a really awkward way of doing it, that. Right, so next is to solder this end in, because there's nothing else going in this end. That just holds it in place. there's a bit of a choice here. I can either, because the next component is going to be a 1 meg from here to here. Now I can either run the 1 meg this way, as I have with these littler ones, or I can run it through these 2 lugs here, just to keep the size or the amount of components in there down. And I think I'm going to do that actually. So we solder this in. It doesn't matter which way round you put them, to be fair. But because I'm not at home, I haven't got any more of them smaller ones in. So we'll have to put them this way, and I just think it would be easier to, with this one already being there. It's going to just be easier to solder it in place like that. There we go. Okay, so next on the list is a 5.1k from here to here. That meets up with the bottom of that 1 meg. So again, we've got these vintage ones with the crud all over the legs. Let's give that a thorough clean, I think. Now this end can be soldered. Again, looking ahead, it looks like we've got a little jumper to put in the other side, so that end can go in. Now this side here, we've got a jumper that goes to this lug here. There's going to be 2 components crossing it, so I could use one of them, I suppose, and put some cable sheathing over it, but if I'm going to do that, I might as well just use some cable. So let's see, on our drawing, it goes in 1 away from there, so that's right there. And there is something else going in that, which is awkward, so I'm not going to solder it in. It's going to run all the way to here. There we are. Now I can solder this top end because there's nothing else going in that position. That's nice and easy. Then it's it says a 330 ohm resistor from this position here to the next one along here. Well, I've only got 390 ohm. What's 60 ohm between friends, eh? Close enough for government work, are we going to say? We'll give it a try and see what happens, and if it doesn't work out, I can always change it later on. It's the good thing about Tagboard. If you make a mistake or if there's something you're not sure about, it's so easy, even with the pedal installed, to be able to just change this out. If you've got something like Vero board or strip board or whatever, it becomes very hard to change anything because you've got to remove the board, and then, whereas for me, just cut it out and solder something else in its place. Oh no. Ha. So I've just soldered that in, and there's actually another component. There's a 1 meg going from here to here. I can solder this end, so I just got the wrong end. Brilliant. So let's solder that in, then I'll show you how I get round it. Or, well, I suppose you've probably guessed how you get round it. Heat it up and just stick a component in the hole. So here's our 1 meg. It's got to go between here and here. Put it through this hole because that's where it's got to go, and then I'll get it so then it's where I want it to sit on the board, and I'll cut just past it. So then I'm not trying to force lots of component end through a hole. I can just sneak it in a little bit. Heat it up with the soldering iron and then just push it in. Now once it's in situ, I do advise that you go over the joint again. I mean, you don't have to, but I figure if you're here with the soldering iron, you might as well. And then usually it'll be all bent up and stuff, so you'll have to straighten it up however you want it with your snips. That should do it. So there is a component coming from there, so maybe I'll push it over that way. There. Not as pretty as I'd like, if I'm honest. Now, we've got that down here in this position. We have a 22NF that joins up with this one here. We can solder this end because there's nothing else going in, but there's a 1 meg going up here. Here we go with the tropical fish again. We can solder this end. Try not to knock it out of whack. So if I lift that up, straighten up everything that I've messed up, there we have it in place. Now from this one here, we're going to have a 1 meg going from here to here. Now I've showed you how to put them across here, I've showed you how to put the little ones across there. Now for these ones, if I'm joining the this sort of size resistor 1 lug across, all I do is bend it in half and make this sort of shape. Then you can slot it in as so. It's not really important, but the way I like to do it is, if I'm doing something like this, I put the body of the resistor away from whichever side has the largest component, which happens to be that side. Now I'm going to solder this side in. But I have a feeling the other side is going to have a ton of components in there, so I won't solder that side in, and I am exactly correct. So first things first, we're going to have a 5.1k from here to here. And this is the last of our Phillips capacitors, Phillips resistors. I did think there was enough one in here, but maybe I was wrong. I was definitely wrong. Right, so from here, there we are. That's how that one's going to go. Now neither side can get soldered in. There's me jumping the gun, because I need a 82 ohm resistor between here and here. Now I haven't got an 82 ohm, but I have got 247 ohms. So I'm going to take these two and do my little join as such. Give it a quick solder. Now I know I always say it, when you're cutting the top off them, don't cut too close to the resistors, otherwise the whole thing just falls apart. I know it doesn't look very neat having them like that, but I promise you, it's better than the thing falling apart in some time and then not doing the job that you want it to do. So this side can get soldered in. And actually both sides can get soldered in, this side can get soldered in too. Perfect. There we go. Now, as for this end, we have a 1 UF cap coming from here over to here. So I'm using non-polar. It says non-polar on the circuit drawing. And I've just realised I've missed the 2 NF cap out of my little pack. I wonder if I've got anything I can use for that. Damn. Right, now because these are quite big, normally I raise them off the board. But I don't want to raise this one off the board because we're trying to keep the size down. So I've got a choice of either squeezing it in here with not much space or mounting it underneath, and I'm going to mount it underneath. So to mount it underneath, I've got to solder this first. Then it's going to go through that lug there and then also through this one here. I want to keep it as tight to the body as I can. This will probably set the height of the circuit in the inside the thing. So I'm going to fold them over, double check that I've got them in the right spacing. Yes, I have. And then just solder them in. There we go. There. So there's our 1 UF fitted to the board. Now across here we've got a 10 NF here. Now let me see, I don't want to solder that in because, oh yeah I do, I'll have to, there's not much space in the lugs here, so there is going to be another component going into either side of this, but because they're so close, because this component's so big, it's a pain to squeeze them in there, so I'll go into this centre bit here. Now, the top side is going to be a 47, no, not a 47, an 82K cap, which is here. So clearly I didn't have an 82K cap, but I have got a 470K, 82K cap, what am I saying? 82K resistor. Come on, Joe. Let's get the English out. So I didn't have an 82K resistor, but I do have a 100K and a 470K. Add them together in parallel and you get close enough. I would like to show you on my fluke, but of course I haven't got it with me. Brilliant. This is just going to sit between them. Look there. I don't really want to have it raised like that far off the board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to lie it flat basically. It's not brilliant, it's probably going to be the highest component, but bit of an awkward one. But we got there in the end. There you go, and I can just probably bend that forward a little bit, like so. I'll keep it in. Right, next we've got a 47k going through this side, which is going to be this one, and again I don't want to stick it up standing up, bit awkward. So with this one I'm going to run the legs along the body like that. Then, because I'm a genius and I've already soldered this bit in, I'll have to cut the leg to size and then solder it and then make the longer leg fit the same. So it'll sit like that eventually. Just give that other leg another solder, make sure it's in the way that I want it. Straighten it up. I mean, I love these dial resistors. That's actually a 47k resistor, not a capacitor. It's an old one. There we go. Now, from here to here, we've got a 22 NF cap, and it doesn't like attach to anything else, so I can just whack it in the space and solder both ends, which is fantastic. There's our tropical fish cap in that position. Now it's almost like the circuit breaks a sec, so we get a little bit of space back, and I can see there's two 10k resistors and two 2NF caps. Being amazing, I've only put one 2NF cap in here, which is not great. I have got my two 10k resistors though, so I'm going to go away and see if I can salvage one from something I've got lying around here and see where we are. Okay, all I could find was a boring old box cap. Well, I'm just going to have to go with this. So I'm going to ensure that this 2NF, well actually it's a 2.2 NF cap, close enough. I'm going to ensure that that one's in the first position because that's part of the tone stack, and the second one is the output cap. So we'll have the boarding cap as the output cap and the other one as part of the tone stack, but there you go. So back on with it. Next we're going to use our 10k resistor, and that's just going to go straight up and down between these. Now I can attach this end, but I can't attach the upper end because we've got some other components going in there. There we go. And next in this same bit is going to be the first of our 2NF caps, or 2.2 NF in my case. Close enough for government work, I think. Now again with this one, we want to just double check and see if we've got any other components to go in here before we go soldering away. And we do. There's a 10k going to go across here, but I'm going to put it through the center holes because, well, space. So if I solder this top one in, that's not quite soldered properly. For some reason these little polystyrene caps, the little legs on them are a bloody nightmare to solder. Right, there we are. So that's in place. Now next we do need to put our 10k resistor across them two lugs there, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to solder in our last cap, and that's just going to go between these two lugs here. Straighten that on. And there's nothing else going in these, so I can solder away. Okay, now last but not least is to fit this in here. I'm going to bend that out the way, and I'll probably fit it lengthways like that, just to keep the height down, because again we've got to squeeze it into our enclosure. Seems reasonable to me. What are we looking like? Right, there we go. These should be our last on board or this should be our last on board component, should I say. Usually at this point I will wire up, there's a lot of the lives joining together and a lot of the earths joining together on this, and there's some jumpers in and stuff. Normally I will wire them up on the bottom, but because I've never made this circuit before, I don't want to wire them up on the bottom, and then if there's a problem, me not be able to see the wires while I'm tracing it. So I'll install it in the enclosure, and then I'll wire up all the wires that need to go in as we go, just so then when I nearly said then, if there's a problem, I'll be able to see the wires when I'm diagnosing it. And I can already see that I've left a little bit of scrap metal in there. Don't want to leave that, shorten something out. Actually, what am I talking about? Can anyone spot what is absolutely missing from this circuit? What, apart from the transistors? Well done, Joe. Brilliant. There we go. So this circuit calls for BS 170s, as my American friends would say. BS 170s. They're MOSFET transistors. I haven't got them. Well, I have. I've got some, but I'm not sure if they're real or not. I'm not sure if they're something else and labelled up as BS 170. They don't sound great. So I'm going to use 2N7000s. Now, I know that these are real and good, and they're fantastic. They do the same job as the BS 170s, only that maybe slightly less gain, I would say. You know, that's nitpicking. The only thing is, they are the opposite way round. So the pinouts, a BS 170 would go in this way round, and you'd have the source, gate and drain. These ones are the opposite way round. To make it source, gate and drain, we have to fit them in like that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put these in. Now, they're going to just go in one after another on the end here. And I'm going to have them so that then the round bit is facing towards the body. That's how you will fit them. If you're fitting BS 170s, they'll fit that way round. but I'm going to fit them that way round because these aren't BS170s. It all makes sense. There's our 2N7000 MOSFET transistors now added. Circuit's looking a bit busy, to be fair, as far as Tagboard goes. It's fairly big, and I really wish that that was on the upper side so then you can see it, but you know, what can you do? Now it's time to get this installed in our box of rock enclosure. So now we have all of our fittings and fixtures attached to our enclosure. I've managed, so instead of going this way around, which was, I mean, what do we think? Does that look okay? It's real tight, and I'm worried that I'm going to foul the enclosure and something's going to short out. Or, because I managed to squeeze in these smaller tone and volume pots, I could probably fit the circuit in long ways, and that'll give me loads of room either side. I mean, we're only just about sneaking past that jack there, but I think we'll be alright. Let me know what you think. Would you, if you were buying this pedal, would you prefer if it was that way, or don't care? I mean, personally, I like to fit them that way, but you know, that's a fine balance between shorting out or not. I think I'm going to make a command decision, and I'm going to go that way. Right, I'm going to get this circuit installed, and then we'll crack on with the wiring. And that is the Tagboard now mounted inside the enclosure. It's going to be fun trying to wire this bad boy up. There's quite a few connections in here, and not as much room as I normally like, but there you go. I have, as ever, forgot stuff. I'm dutying work today, and I've forgot LEDs and the resistors to go with the LEDs, and also the LED bezel. So I'm going to have to fit that at home after my duty, and probably before the sound sample. But we can crack on with some wiring. So the first wire I'm going to start with is the earth wire. I'm going to start from this end of the board, and there's an earth wire that attaches here, and then it comes all the way down to here, and then it attaches again to the bottom of this 1 meg, yeah, and then it goes all the way down to here and then to ground. And there's also a ground on this side, but I'll just focus on this side first. So I'm going to link all of them together, along with, while I'm here, I'll link in the stomp switch, because we need a ground for that for our LED. So I might as well wire that in while I can. It's going to be that look there. That's earths attached to our 3-pole double throw switch, and then here, here and here. I've run another wire down to this end lug here, which is also an earth, but I've left it open because next I'm going to add in the earth for our gain, which is this center lug here. And for this, I'm just going to add in one of my cut component legs. If anything, it'll just stabilize the whole circuit up against that structurally, so that's helpful. And then I'll run another wire around here, and that can attach to the 2 earths on our jacks. I know you don't have to wire both of them up to earth because the enclosure is actually earthed, but I just do it anyway. So the 2 enclosures, the 2 jacks, and then also our 9-volt connection, the earth on that, we'll add them straight to that. And then our volume pot, the earth is pin 1 here, so I'll run another one of these down to that, and then that should be it. Oh no, tell a lie, I was going to say that should be it, but there's actually another earth which I'll probably run from this position here round to here. All of our earths are now fully wired up, and I almost missed one down here as well, going to the 82k over here, but we got there in the end. Next I'm going to go back over this side, and I'm going to finish off the 9-volt wiring. So the 9-volt comes from around here, and it goes in here through this 82 ohm resistor, and then from this side it joins to the points of the circuit that power up our well, BS170s in your case, but it'll be 2N7000s in my case. We've now got our live wire coming from over here. I've left this lug on our 9-volt jack free because I'm going to run a wire around for the supply to our 9-volt. 9 volts is our supply for the LED at a later date. It'll probably run round this way actually, but I haven't got the LED here. So, but anyway, this wire runs round, comes in and meets the 82 ohm cap that I made out of 2 caps here. Then it jumps over to the next 5.1k resistor. You'll see there's 3 of them on the board here. Shocker, that's because 3 of them supply these 3 transistors with voltage. That's all wired in. Next, the only thing, or lastly on this side, that needs to be wired in that I can see is the input, which is coming from here. It goes in through this 100 NF cap. So I'm just going to run a wire out round here, and I'm actually going to come round the back into the input because that's where all the other wires are going. I'm going to move on to this row of tags. The first wire up is from this here. Handily, I didn't look at the schematic like I was supposed to, or look at the layout properly, because there's a wire that has to come from this lug here round to the gain pot, but I've obviously soldered that in, so I'm probably going to try and sneak the wire in at the back here, or maybe I'll go from the center lug here. Let's see. That's now fitted going to our gain pot. Next, I'm just going to go ahead. I've got coming out of here, comes round to our volume pot in lug 3, which is the inboard pot, the inboard lug. We're going to have a wire that comes there, and then the center lug is going to come out and go round to our output of our switch. Now it's time to wire up the most awkward pot, the tone pot, right in the center here. And the 3 lugs are going to go over to, well, 2 of them are going to go over here to these 2 here, and then one of them is going to go over to the other side of this 82k resistor, and the 10 NF caps are right here, which is attaching into this tone stack area that I said before. I'm going to go ahead and wire them in now, and then we'll get on to the signal wires for the whole circuit. There we have the tone pot right stuck down there underneath this. It would have been easier to keep this out while I wired that up, to be fair, but that's now wired up. Whilst doing that, being the absolute legend or legend that I am, I just noticed that I missed out the output of our volume pot. Is it our volume pot? Yeah, our volume pot, and the line coming from here going into our volume pot. I did say we were going to do that and I didn't do it, so I'm just going to wire them in now. So there'll be a wire coming from here around the outside and going into our volume pot here on number 3, and then number 2 is going to come out. I'm probably going to take it round that way and go into the 3-pole double throw switch, and that's going to be our output. Today's Sunday and we've got a new class joining the establishment, so I've had to run off and show people their bunks and stuff, so I keep forgetting things because I'm going away for an hour and then coming back to it. That's my excuse anyway. Yeah, it's always fun to see people join for the first time straight out of basics training, where they've had drills shoved down their throat and they've been running around a camp for 10 weeks or whatever, and then they come here and it's a bit more chilled out. So yeah, but that's my excuse on why I keep messing things up anyway. That's our volume pot fully wired up. We've got a line coming from here into the volume pot on pin 3, and then a line coming out of the volume pot on pin 2, all the way into the output of our 3-pole double throw switch. Lastly, well, not lastly because I still need to do the LED, but lastly on here, I'm going to do the input and output, going to here and here, and our little loop that I always forget. That's our box of rock now fully wired up, apart from the fact that I need to run 1 wire from here round to our LED, the live, and then from the LED there's going to be a resistor going over to here to join up with the earth, but I'll have to do that at home because I absolutely forgot to bring any LEDs or even the mounting stuff for it. Here's how it looks. We've got our rock chicks on there. I went with these Gibson style knobs. Oh, look, I've left some plastic on that one. That's not very professional of me. I went with these Gibson style amplifier knobs. I really like them. Bakelite. I think they go well with this colour. Now that this box of Ultimate Rock is complete, I'd love to know in the comments what you guys think of my techniques of cramming a large tagboard into a reasonable sized enclosure. Now we're going to move on to the sound sample. If you made it this far into this video, you're going to absolutely love this next video on how to build my personal favourite circuit. It is, of course, the Rangemaster.